For 10 years, I believed that our marriage meant something, that the countless moments we had shared had built a foundation of respect, if not love. But I was wrong. The signs had always been there. The subtle dismissals, the cruel jokes at my expense disguised as humor, the way her friends looked at me with thinly veiled contempt. I ignored them, choosing peace over confrontation, believing that our bond was stronger than petty slights. The weekend getaway was meant to be nothing more than a short break with her friends and their partners. A lakeside cabin, barbecues, hiking trails, nothing out of the ordinary. When they suggested a day trip to a nearby national park, I agreed, despite feeling unwell. I should have stayed behind. After hours of hiking, exhaustion overtook me. My head pounded from dehydration. I sat down, breathless. "I need a break," I said. "You guys go ahead. I'll catch up." They nodded sympathetically. My wife kissed my forehead, promised to bring back some water, and disappear around the bend with the others. I watched them go, unaware that this would be the last time I saw them for hours. An hour passed. Then two. I called her. Voicemail. Again and again, straight to voicemail. The sun began its descent, and a sickening realization settled in my stomach. They had left me. Desperation fueled me as I pushed myself back down the trail, my legs trembling with each step. When I finally reached the parking lot, the sight of the empty space where our car had been hit me like a physical blow. They were gone. I managed to flag down a park ranger, who let me use the office phone. When my wife finally answered, I could hear laughter in the background. "Oh, you're still there? We thought you'd figure out sooner," she said, amusement dripping from her voice. "Consider it a little adventure." More laughter. "We're already halfway home. Enjoy the walk." Then she hung up. The park ranger gave me a look of pity that burned worse than my blistered feet. 200 miles from home. No car. Limited cash. No nearby hotel. It wasn't just a joke. It was deliberate cruelty. A message loud and clear. I meant nothing to her. That night, I slept on a bench at the ranger station. Sometime between the cold settling into my bones and the first hints of dawn creeping over the horizon, something inside me broke, and then reformed. The hurt crystallized into clarity. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was the final confirmation of what I had refused to see for years. 3 days. That's how long it took me to get home. I hitchhiked, took buses, and walked for miles. 3 days of unanswered calls, of mocking text messages from her. Having fun yet? Almost home. Still enjoying nature? Each one was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. During those 3 days, I stopped asking why. Why she had done it. Why they had all found it funny. The why no longer mattered. Only my response did. I reached our neighborhood as the sun rose on the 4th day. Dirty, exhausted, but changed. I didn't go home immediately. First, I visited someone who could help ensure that when my wife returned from her extended girls' trip, she would find exactly what she deserved. Standing at the curb, staring at the house we had shared for a decade, I made a vow. This would be the last time she would ever have the opportunity to hurt me. Some bonds, once broken, should not be repaired. With that final thought, I turned and walked toward the hardware store that had just opened for the day. The clerk raised an eyebrow at my appearance, but asked no questions as I purchased new locks. My next stop was the bank, where I withdrew half of our joint savings, just enough for a hotel and a lawyer. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from her friends, all variations of, "Can't you take a joke? Why are you being so dramatic?" I silenced them all. The locksmith arrived within the hour, a quiet man who worked efficiently. "Marriage problems?" he asked, nodding at my wedding ring. I simply nodded, too exhausted to explain. "Been there," he said, handing me the new keys. "Just remember, changing locks is the easy part." In my hotel room, I stood under the shower, watching 3 days of grime swirl down the drain. When I finally looked in the mirror, the man staring back at me was almost unrecognizable. Sunburned, hollow-eyed, harder. Good. I needed that hardness for what came next. My lawyer listened without interruption as I recounted the abandonment, the emotional cruelty. She took notes quickly. "Potentially criminal," she murmured. They left you in a dangerous situation. She outlined the divorce process with clinical precision. Do you have evidence? Text messages? Call logs? I did. Every mocking text, every ignored call, and my wife was still oblivious. Her social media showed her and her friends a resort 3 hours away, raising glasses in a toast, lounging poolside, celebrating their hilarious prank. Not a shred of remorse. 3 days. That's how long I spent securing everything. Changing passwords, gathering important documents, informing my workplace. When I visited the bank again to open a separate account, the manager's face showed recognition as I explained why. Unfortunately common, she said quietly. You're doing the right thing protecting yourself. My phone rang just before midnight on the third day. Her name flashed on the screen. I answered but said nothing. Hey, she said, her voice slurred with alcohol. We're heading home tomorrow. You're not still mad, are you? I remained silent. Seriously, it was just a joke. Everyone thought it was funny. Even the guys. I'll be waiting, I finally replied, then hung up. 3 words. A promise. A warning. The next morning, I returned home to complete my preparations. The divorce papers waited on the kitchen table, along with printed screenshots of her texts and social media posts. Evidence of her cruelty. Security cameras I had installed captured her arrival. She was laughing, an overnight bag slung over her shoulder, until she realized her key no longer worked. Confusion turned to irritation, then to rage. She pounded on the door, yelling my name. I watched from a coffee shop across the street, feeling nothing but certainty. When she finally called, her voice was shrill. Why can't I get in? Did you change the locks? I did. I confirmed. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We need to talk. She started to protest, but I hung up. When I arrived, she was pacing, her face a storm of emotions. This isn't funny, she snapped. I've been waiting for an hour. I said nothing, just unlocked the door. So you changed the locks? Really mature response to a harmless joke. I handed her the divorce papers. She stared at them, then up at me. You can't be serious. 200 miles, I said, my voice steady. You abandoned me, ignored my calls, mocked me, extended your trip to celebrate. These aren't the actions of someone who loves their partner. These are the actions of someone who has contempt for them. She began to cry. It was just supposed to be funny, everyone thought. I played the recording of her laughter from our last call. Her voice, cruel and mocking. Enjoy the walk. 3 days. I had 3 days to think, and I had come to only one conclusion. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. I walked past her, leaving her stunned and silent behind me. The road ahead demanded my full attention now. My lawyer added the latest developments to our growing file. She was outside the courthouse when I texted my coworker, letting them know what had happened. One afternoon, I chose to exit through the back door, avoiding the confrontation she so clearly sought. That night, my inbox held a lengthy email from her, a supposed apology that mentioned her suffering 4 times more than my abandonment. I never meant to hurt you, she wrote, but the evidence suggested otherwise. I've learned my lesson, she claimed. Yet soon after, financial retaliation began. Our joint credit card was maxed out on frivolous purchases, and she made repeated attempts to drain our remaining joint accounts, only thwarted by the freezes I'd requested in advance. Each calculated move validated my decision to end our marriage, though a small part of me still mourned the life we had once envisioned. The mediation session was scheduled exactly 1 month after she left me in the wilderness. I arrived early, centered and prepared. My lawyer nodded approvingly at my calm demeanor. Many clients arrive emotional, she remarked. You're making my job easier. Then, my wife entered with her lawyer, a stern woman with calculating eyes. I noticed immediately that my wife had transformed herself. Conservative dress, subdued makeup, hair neatly pulled back, the image of contrition. Our eyes met briefly before she cast hers downward in a rehearsed display of remorse. The mediator began, setting the ground rules, but my wife's lawyer quickly interrupted. My client wishes to make a statement before we begin. The mediator hesitated, then nodded. My wife unfolded a paper with trembling hands, her voice quivering as she read aloud. Asterisk, I made a terrible mistake. One thoughtless action that I will regret forever. But I believe our 10 years together deserve more than a hasty divorce. I'm asking for another chance to prove my love and commitment. Asterisk, her lawyer jumped in. Asterisk, my client has enrolled in therapy to address her behavior. She is willing to agree to any reasonable conditions for reconciliation, including postnuptial agreements with severe penalties for any future misconduct. Asterisk. My lawyer started to respond, but I placed a hand on her arm. May I? She nodded. For the first time in weeks, I looked directly at my wife. I appreciate the sentiment. I said evenly, asterisk, but this isn't about punishment or redemption. This is about recognition. I finally recognize that we're fundamentally incompatible. There's nothing to save. Asterisk, her facade cracked. Asterisk, that's not true. Asterisk, she exclaimed, tears appearing instantly. Asterisk, we had a good marriage. Everyone said so. Asterisk, the mediator raised a hand to regain control, but my wife pressed on, her voice rising. Asterisk, you're throwing away 10 years over one mistake. Who does that? Asterisk, I remained calm. It wasn't one mistake. I corrected her. Asterisk, it was a culmination of a pattern. The abandonment simply made that pattern impossible to ignore any longer. Asterisk, I turned to the mediator. Asterisk, I'm prepared to be generous in the financial settlement. I just want this resolved quickly. Asterisk, her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but she shook her head violently. Asterisk, he's punishing me. Asterisk, she insisted, eyes flashing with rage. Asterisk, this is revenge, plain and simple. Asterisk, her voice dropped to a venomous hiss. Asterisk, you will regret this. No one will ever love you like I did. Asterisk, the mediator called for a break. As we filed out, my lawyer squeezed my shoulder. That outburst just strengthened our position, she murmured. I nodded but took no satisfaction in it. There were no winners here, only survivors. The mediation failed. She refused every reasonable proposal, demanding counseling instead of a division of assets. Her lawyer eventually pulled her aside, their whispered argument visible through the glass partition. I remained seated, a strange calm washing over me. This, too, was familiar. Her inability to accept reality when it contradicted her desires. We'll proceed to court, my lawyer informed me afterward. Asterisk, but don't worry. Judges have seen this behavior before. Her delaying tactics won't work forever. Asterisk, I nodded, resigned to the longer timeline, but unwavering in my resolve. What I hadn't anticipated was the community division. Friends picked sides. Family members who had once treated me as their own now viewed me with suspicion. Asterisk, you really won't give her another chance? Asterisk, a friend asked over coffee, his expression troubled. Asterisk, everyone makes mistakes. Asterisk, I studied him, wondering how he would feel abandoned in the wilderness. His calls for help met with mockery. Some mistakes reveal fundamental truths, I replied. He never contacted me again. 3 months after the abandonment, I received a letter from her therapist suggesting a joint session. My lawyer advised against it. It's a trap, she warned. Asterisk, anything you say can be twisted and used against you. Asterisk, I declined the invitation, sending a brief but polite refusal. The response was immediate. A barrage of texts accusing me of sabotaging her recovery, of being heartless and vindictive. I changed my phone number the next day. Work became my sanctuary. Without the constant drain of managing her emotions, I thrived. Then came the ambush at my parents' home during Sunday dinner. She arrived uninvited, tearful, clutching photographs from happier times. My mother, always her advocate, had orchestrated the encounter. Just talk to her, she pleaded. Asterisk, that's all she's asking. Asterisk, I excused myself, stepping outside to collect my thoughts. My father followed. I don't understand why you can't forgive her, he said, his disappointment palpable. I faced him, suddenly angry. Asterisk, Would you forgive someone who left mom stranded in the middle of nowhere as a joke? Who laughed while she struggled to find her way home? Asterisk. He fell silent, the realization dawning. I didn't know it was like that, he admitted. I showed him the text messages I had preserved. His expression hardened as he read them, especially the ones where she joked about me being finally gone. Asterisk, wait here. Asterisk, through the window, I watched him confront her. Her expression shifted from confidence to panic. My mother's hands flew to her mouth in shock. Minutes later, my wife stormed out, slamming the door. She didn't look at me as she passed. That night, my father called. We should have asked for your side first, he said, voice heavy with regret. Asterisk, I'm sorry. Asterisk, the weight that lifted from my shoulders was immense. Validation I hadn't realized I desperately needed. By the time we reached court, my wife's lawyer had been replaced by a more aggressive attorney, known for scorched-earth tactics. Prepare for personal attacks, my lawyer warned. They came swiftly. Character assassination, attempt to portray me as controlling, unreasonable. But the evidence spoke louder. The text messages, the park ranger statement, the timeline of my journey home. The judge's face remained impassive, but her eyes narrowed. I've heard enough, she finally said. The ruling was decisive. Exclusive use of our home awarded to me. Minimal spousal support. And, most importantly, an explicit acknowledgement of the abandonment as a significant factor. The court takes a dim view of psychological cruelty, the judge stated, looking directly at my wife. 2 days later, her lawyer contacted mine with a settlement offer. She's finally understood her position, my lawyer said. 6 months after being left in the wilderness, I signed the final divorce papers. A year later, we crossed paths unexpectedly at a conference. She looked different, thinner, wary. You look well, she said tentatively. I'm glad therapy has helped you, I replied. Asterisk, I hope you find happiness. Asterisk, the elevator doors closed between us. And just like that, I was free.